So, again, some of our brothers and sisters, misguidedly, they ask us, is the Mawlid, is it not Bidd'ah? Is it not Bidd'ah? You know what Bidd'ah means? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, in one of his speeches, he said, beware of new things. Beware of new things. For every new thing is an innovation. It is a bid'ah. And every bid'ah is dalala. It is misguidance. And every misguidance is in the nar, it is in the fire. Now this is a very important hadith and we should be very mindful of it. But we also need to understand it correctly. We also need to understand it correctly. Is every new practice or every new way of doing things in Islam Bidd'ah? Is it Bidd'ah? Because when we ask the same brothers and sisters, why do you use or why do you make use of modern technology? Why do you make use of video cameras? Why do you make use of motor vehicles? Why do you make use of watches? Why do you make use of all of these things? What is their answer to us? They say, oh my brother, this is worldly matters. This is not a deeni matter. This is a worldly matter. It is not a deeni matter. And we say, okay, it's a worldly matter, but it's not a deeni matter. Where is this distinction in the hadith that you just quoted to me? Didn't the Prophet ﷺ say every new thing? He didn't say every new thing but not the worldly matters. He said every new thing. Now, forgive me if I'm wrong, but my understanding coming into Islam is that we do not make distinction in this deen between matters which are worldly and religious. We don't just come in the mosque is for deen, and we go outside and this is a different reality. Oh, this is the world, you can do what you like in the world. Yeah? We have got rules about living in the world. We have rules about marriage. We have rules about divorce. We have rules about business. We have rules about taking interest. Are these not worldly matters? And where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line between worldly matters and deeni matters? Because let's have a look at some of the ways that we are doing ibadah now. The ways that people who are criticizing the Mawlid, how they are doing ibadah. They have a phone, a computer phone, a smartphone, and they download a Quran app on it. And they open up the Quran on the computer. And they press a button and they hear the Qari reciting. And they can pause, they can rewind, they can fast forward. Is this ibadah? Is this deen or is this dunya? Is it deen or is it dunya? This mosque, mashallah, is not made out of date palms. It is not made out of date palms. That's how Masjid al-Nabawi was originally built, out of date palms. It is made out of modern materials, concrete, steel. A few hundred years ago, we didn't even know how to construct a mosque like this. Is this a matter of deen or is it a matter of dunya? What about jihad? Are we asking mujahideen to take swords and bows and arrows now? They have to put the AK-47 aside? Is jihad, is it deen or is it dunya? So these kind of distinctions, A, there's no evidence from the hadith in the first place for what they are saying. And secondly, these distinctions are very, very questionable. They're very questionable. So then they say to you, no, brother, you've misunderstood. Okay, we'll give you explain it in a different way. The Salaf, they say, the Salaf were allowed to do innovation. The Salaf were allowed to bring Bidd'ah, but we are not allowed to bring Bidd'ah. They are allowed to bring new things, but we are not allowed to bring new things. And again, this is a very funny statement. Who was the person that Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, who did he tell this warning to first and foremost to? Sahaba Ikram. So are they saying that on the one hand, he is telling them not to do Bidd'ah, on the other hand, he's allowing them to do Bidd'ah? Does this make any sense? And actually, if we look in the time of the Salaf, we see real Bidd'ah going on. We see real Bidd'ah. What is real Bidd'ah? Let's clarify this. Real Bidd'ah is in Aqaid. First and foremost, it is in Aqaid. And the deviant sects in Islam, in the time of the Salaf, when they first emerged, were defined by their Aqidah. How much they diverged from the Aqidah of Ahl-Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So let's give a couple of examples. Firstly, there were the Khawarij. Khawarij, they said, if somebody commits a sin, a major sin, then they have left Islam. They do a major sin, they've left Islam. And with this very strange understanding, they did takfir on Imam Ali karamallahu wajhul kurb. Yeah? They said that Imam Ali was a kafir, na'udhu billah. So this is Bidd'ah in Aqidah. Because when somebody does a sin, they are a sinner. They are not a kafir. This is Bidd'ah, changing the beliefs of Islam. Another example of this was the Ghulat Shia. The very early Shia sects, some of them, they said Ali is Allah. Ali is Allah. So they were the other extreme. The other extreme to the Khawarij. Said Ali is Allah. Na'udhu billah. This is real Bidd'ah. But these people, when they had these beliefs, by the way, most of these things don't exist anymore. Yeah, these sects that I'm talking about right now. I'm not talking about the modern day sects. I'm talking about sects that have died out. These people were alive in the time of the Salaf. So were these Bidd'ah allowed? No, of course they're not allowed. Okay? So then how do we make a distinction? How do we make a distinction? What distinction do we make between those new practices which are allowed and those new practices which are not allowed? It's very, very simple. It is in the balance of the Shariat. It is what accords with the Sharia. Something which is haram, something which is forbidden, it can never become part of Islamic practice. But if it is something which has not been forbidden, and the basis of Islamic law is what? Not that everything is forbidden until there's a hadith proving that it's allowed. It's the other way around. That everything is permitted until it is forbidden. Not only that, Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam has given the distinction for us. He has given the distinction for us. In Sahih Muslim, there is a story about Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. He is calling people to give chanda, to give charity. He's calling people to give charity. And people were giving little bits of charity. And so one man had the bright idea. He is a very wealthy man. He said, if I bring lots and lots and lots of money, yeah, and I make a big show of myself giving money, then maybe that will encourage other people to also give money. So he came and his shirt was full of money like this, and he was sort of staggering from side to side. And he put the money down. And Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam approved of this. Because once he had done this, many other people started donating, giving money, increasing the revenue. And then he said, whoever introduces a good sunnah, because sunnah originally, it's not limited to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but it means just a way of doing things. He says, whoever introduces a good sunnah, they will get the reward of it, and whoever follows them in doing that sunnah. So if you start a good sunnah, and other people follow you in it, you will get your reward, but you'll also get the reward of everyone who follows you in doing that. MashaAllah. And he said, whoever introduces a bad sunnah, yeah, whoever introduces a bad sunnah, because some people say, oh, he just means reviving a sunnah here. Just reviving one of my sunnah. No. Because then he says, whoever introduces a bad sunnah, they will get the sin of it and the sin of whoever follows them in it. So he, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, is making it very clear. If you do something which is in accordance to Shariat, is not being made haram, but it's a new way of encouraging people in deen, of helping people to do their deeni actions, then this is a good thing. And if we look at the ways Sahaba introduced new practices after the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam had passed away, you can see that this is the principle behind it. The Quran, the Mus'haf. You know Mus'haf, when we take the copy of the Quran, we call it Quran. And then we say many Qurans. This is wrong. There's only one Quran. The copy of the Quran is called Mus'haf. There was no Mus'haf in the lifetime of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. There's nobody had one copy of the Quran in his lifetime. It was written on different pieces of leather and bones and saddles, because there's no paper at that time. But in the time when Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq Akbar radiallahu anhu, when he was the Caliph, he had the whole Quran compiled into one Mus'haf. And even he was saying to himself, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't do this. Should I do it? But Sayyidina Umar said, yes, it is something good. It is something good. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, in his caliphate, he saw that during the nights of Ramadan, that the people were gathering behind different Qur'an in Masjid al-Nabawi. Because during the lifetime of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the number of Sahaba was smallish. It wasn't a huge number. It was towards the end, but still it wasn't so many. And people were very sincere, they wanted to learn the Quran, and everyone would read the Taraweeh at home. Only on 2 or 3 occasions did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam lead them in Jamaat for Taraweeh. But Sayyidina Umar, because he saw that the people had become weaker, he organized it into one Jamaat behind one Qari. In fact, one Qari for the men and one Qari for the women. And he made this a regular practice. He personally didn't always take part himself. Because there's a report in Sahih al-Bukhari of him standing at the back of the masjid, observing this and saying to his friends, this is a blessed Bidd'ah. This is a blessed Bidd'ah. In Sahih al-Bukhari. So again, he's introducing something new to facilitate for the people. Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu. This is also mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari. During the time of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, Sahaba Ikram would stay in the masjid from Fajr until Jummah. From Fajr until Jummah Salah. Reading Quran, doing dhikr, reading Salah. And so there's only need for one azan. The azan just before the khutbah. Just before the khutbah. But it's not haram for you to go out to the mosque between Fajr and Jummah, and it's not even haram for you to go out and do business and do your job. This was just the way of Sahaba. They had so much love for ibadah, and for the day of Jummah they stayed in the masjid the entire time between Fajr and Jummah. So by the time of Sayyidina Uthman, most of the people, they were not at that same maqam. They were not at that same station as those Sahaba Ikram were. So they were busy in the market doing business. So, and they were coming late for Jummah. So he said, we need to add an extra azan to facilitate for them. And that's where we get the second azan. It's the first one in time, but it's the second one in institution. We have the second azan now. Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajhul kareem, he observes that the non-Arabs, they're having problems with the Arabic language. They don't understand the Arabic language. They find it difficult to learn. So he writes the first book of Arabic grammar. And don't tell me that learning the Arabic grammar is not important for understanding Quran. It's very important for understanding Quran. And therefore it is important for your deen. Sayyidina Amir Muawiyah, he adds the harakats. You know, before the Quran, the original Arabic script, it has no fatha, kasra and dhamma. Or some of you say zabr, zay, pesh. There's one in the original Quran because the Arabs knew. They knew how to read Arabic without these things. And you know what else wasn't there in the original script? The dots. 2 dots on the ta, 1 dot on the ba. They weren't there. Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, who was a zalim, who was an oppressor, he is the one who introduced the dots. He introduced the dots. And then, over time, what? Now we have it written on paper, we have it bound, we have it pressed, we have it printed. Why? To facilitate for us, to make our deen easy for us. So the same thing. The ulama ikram, and in particular Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, he made this practice, the way that we do Eid Milad al-Nabi today, he made this a practice to revive the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to remind people of the characteristics of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to remind people of his rights upon us, to remind people about the manners that we have to have towards him, to remind people of his status. Yeah? And you know, if you look at the Islamic history, because this is what Ghiyawi Sharif was originally. You know, Ghiyawi Sharif is a separate function now, but originally Ghiyawi Sharif, you started things on the 11th, and it went into the 12th. And it was not just to educate the Muslims, but also to do da'wah to the non-Muslims as well. But if you look in Islamic history, you see that Imam al-Ghazali, he writes Ulum ad-Din, to bring the spirituality back into the deen, into understanding of our deen. Then Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani came, and then he made this a movement, bringing the spirituality back, not just in books, but amongst the people. Third generation who is brought up in this society, the society of Eid Milad al-Nabi, Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, who liberates Palestine. Because he was born in a society of people who grew up with love of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he could call upon them to cast out the invaders. So as I said before, what aspect of Eid Milad al-Nabi is objectionable to our dear brothers and sisters who are making these objections? Somebody told me, one of the organizers,